Well, hello.
Top of the day to you, young lad.
That's right. I guess
How
it's
are you, Nick?
I'm good. I'm good. Just starting off early with some youth soccer and yeah, always busy weekends around our house. So
Yeah,
that's a good thing. That means we're living and staying busy, and it's it's a good problem to have, I should say.
I have cleaned 2 toilets and done the laundry.
Oh wow. Okay.
There
You
you
know, that
go.
reminds me. I I I did promise my wife we would do I would do laundry this weekend. Um,
Excellent.
so we've got some stuff to do. It's actually our 17th anniversary weekend. So
Oh,
yeah,
that's outstanding.
yep, yep, anniversary.
2007.
Yep, yep. Back in '07 and April 28th. So
Where were
busy.
you married? Happy anniversary to both of you.
Oh, thank you. We got married in Mount Vernon, Washington, which is about an hour's north of Seattle, um, in a what they call the Skagit Valley, near between the mountains and the Puget Sound. They have a big the other than Holland, they have one of the world's biggest tulip festivals there. So if you want to see something as big as close to Holland's tulip scene, then Mount Vernon is your place to go. Um, so yeah, we didn't think about that when we planned our wedding. So all of our guests had to commute through the traffic of it, but it is a beautiful time of year there. So it was a good spring.
Did you tiptoe through the tulips with your beloved?
We did avoid the crowds. Actually, we didn't go there that year, but we did have a nice lodge and place that we ceremony on a hill and in the mountains that we stayed at a bed and breakfast, and we had a view of the valley where all the tulip fields were. So I think the view was better than experiencing the crowds on that
For
occasion.
sure. Oh yeah, on your
Yeah,
wedding day and thereafter,
yeah,
beautiful.
yeah. No, it was cool. It was good. We did it. We were living in Ohio at the time, but that's where my wife grew up. So we coordinated it all from distance, and just made it happen. And we did it all on our own money and resources, and did it on the cheap. And I mean, gosh, I think about what we did and what we had at our wedding, and to do the same thing, we did it for like $3,000, everything, all done. And to do that nowadays, even the same places and everything we did would probably be about 15 grand. So yeah.
Yeah.
And for people, 15 grand still sounds cheap, I guess. I don't know. But yeah.
Well,
So
happy anniversary. That's a
yeah,
beautiful
thank you.
thing.
Sorry, a little detour to start the day, but it's good to
Mm-hmm.
it's good to ease into things. So yeah.
Good. Well, uh, I'm just going to jump right in. I'm going to talk about something I didn't even warn you that I was going to talk about.
Oh, okay.
We have the usual grief stuff, but I also wanted to mention something.
Yeah.
This is kind of out of the blue. I'm just commenting on a news item that
Oh,
happened
okay.
2 days ago. Um, Helen Vendler. Have you ever heard of her?
No, I'm not familiar with the
Most
name.
people have not. She passed away at age 90,
Okay.
and I wanted to bring her up. I posted about it on my Facebook page. Um, she was a critic of poetry, knowing just about all the poets from Shakespeare until now.
Oh.
She was a professor at Harvard. She taught at Oxford
Hmm.
University and a couple other schools, but she was mainly at Harvard from the mid 80s on. Um, and I read 3 books by her. Um, one was commentary on the poetry of Emily Dickinson.
Okay.
Another was a commentary on the poetry of Seamus Heaney, who is an Irish poet who won the Nobel Prize for Literature. And then she wrote a book on the sonnets of Shakespeare.
Okay.
Those are the ones that I read. She wrote many other books. But the reason I bring her up is I've been thinking about her for the
Hmm.
last couple days. And I feel like she needs to be mentioned on a podcast. Um, because a life dedicated to um, poetry, to aligning oneself with poetic truth,
Hmm.
um, to beauty, is being trampled by other types of lives in our culture right now.
Mm.
I bring her up just because I think that sort of devotion to high end awareness, we'll put it,
Okay.
is a beautiful counter to what I see as the rising tide of fascism in the world,
Right.
which is aggressive, bludgeoning, ignorant, you know, anti truth,
Yeah.
sexist, misogynistic, racist, homophobic, etc.
Right. Right.
And I just wanted to pause and just say, Helen Vendler, um, I honor you.
Yeah.
I wish I could. If I had a couple $1 million, one thing that I would do is I would be a grave tourist, and I would go to graves like hers
Hmm.
and put a flower down on them.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, just a subtle way of honoring that which is deep and true and beautiful.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Well, and if you hadn't told me this was a part of today's talk, or that it wasn't, I would think it was because
Yeah,
I mean, well, I think you're gonna mention some things about poetry, right?
I am indeed.
And we're also talking about honoring too. And I think that how what better time and platform than today, and your topic of modes to grief than to honor someone who's recently passed and has had an impact on your life and many people's lives for that matter. So
Right.
I think that's cool. The world, I mean, we talked about this before, that there is this aligning of the stars, and it makes me think, are we is it that things align and it's like, wow, like how adjacent in thought or topic can things possibly get while seeming so random? Or is it just that when you live a life of noticing, observing, being present, that those things become more obvious? So something I'll think about as we we get into it today with honoring, because there's a consciousness, like you talked about, when you're dedicated to being conscious and being aware and attuned with things, you get to see how beautiful things are. Like the fact that we're doing a talk on a week when someone who ties in so well with this,
Right.
and like you said, this wasn't planned, but would have fooled me if you didn't plan this, right? Like, but no,
Right.
of course it wasn't planned because nobody thought she was going to die this week, right?
Right.
Like,
Right.
yeah. So,
Apparently,
um,
go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just think it's a beautiful thing when you can be in a place in life and spiritually, emotionally, consciously to see these beautiful connections. So
Yes, yes.
yeah.
And to notice somebody who's just sitting there year in, year out for 75 years, not 75, but 65,
Yeah.
publishing about poetry and awareness of self
Hmm.
and a depth of understanding of beauty. Huh. You gotta mention her.
Yeah.
Well, young man, shall we adjourn strictly into what I was going to talk about today?
Sure. Yeah. Let's let her rip, as they say, huh?
Good. Let her rip. Let her rip. So, for those who weren't with us the first 2 weeks, we're talking about um, or the first 2 weeks of this modes of grief thing.
Mhm.
We are talking about three ways of approaching grief. When people lose a loved one, they don't know what to do, don't know how to do it. They are grief illiterate a lot of times, and I say that without judgment.
Yeah.
Um, but they're not sure how to wade into this. And they say to me frequently, as a hospice chaplain, they say, "Can you help me? What can you do? What can I do?" And I don't have a prescription for them, but I do have a series of invitations for them to contemplate.
Mm.
And context is decisive. I say that every week because I don't know what works for them, but I
Right.
do know that they can look at this list and see what fits them better
Hmm.
than I can tell.
Yeah.
And so the first 6 months to a year we call triage, and we talked about that, which is activity. And people who are watching this for the first time, you can go back and look at the previous podcasts. But that's, just as a nurse or a doctor or an aide puts a splinter on a broken leg or arm, we've got a cat that's just about to enter into the scene here. Hi, Hastings. Hastings is on the table here. He may emerge. Now he's going back away. Okay. Um, just as a doctor or nurse puts a splint on your leg to begin the healing, so there are activities that you can do that are the triage.
Hmm.
And we went through that: drinking water, uh, making sure you get rest, um, getting exercise. Movement is medicine. Um, taking, making sure that your input, your cultural input, is healing. In other words, don't spend a lot of time watching divisive politics on TV, but spend more time watching rom coms or something like that.
Yeah.
Listening to music. That's triage.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now, today, we're going to talk about ceremonial self care and honoring. And I've written a thing about it.
Yeah. I am pulling mine up now to follow along with it. There we go.
You're pulling it up to follow along.
That's right.
I
Okay.
can't make things up as I'm going because you got me marked down.
Oh, you no, you sure can. It's always good to. I like some improvisation.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, I'll see what I can do.
No pressure.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So, ceremonial self care and honoring the dead. This is a level of mindful observance which you can embrace so that you are not just thrashing about, feeling bad about your loss, but which channels those feelings, honors your dead loved one, and activates a new level of awareness of the mystery of your life, your loved one's life, and of all lives. I have 9 approaches for you bundled together as one. None of these 9 approaches I am about to list is a magic bullet, a panacea. But taken together, they strengthen your ability to cope with the chronic sorrow by moving into a deeper level of awareness of yourself and of the rhythms of life. They inject a new level of thoughtfulness into your daily experience. These 9 practices dawn in you a sense that the life and death of your loved one has more meaning than you previously suspected. They are as follows. First, light a candle on the birthday of your loved one. Simply light a candle on the birthday of your cherished deceased as the simplest and yet most elegant practice of honoring which you can summon. Do it with meaning, perhaps on a brand new and beautiful candle which you have purchased for the occasion. 2, beside the birthday candle that you lit, read a poem aloud that speaks to your feelings about them. Maybe you've written it, maybe you found it somewhere. You can go on the internet and find poems for the occasion. It is important that you read this out loud in your own voice, in your own style of commemoration and love. And there's poems that you could look into, such as Ripening by Wendell Berry, a beautiful poem that he wrote to his beloved wife. They weren't dead yet, but they were approaching it. But people can kind of consult their own poetry repertoire or write something. Maybe read that poem 3 times to let its sense sink into you. 3, listen to their favorite song on the anniversary of the day that she or he died. This can be powerful, especially if the song is something unique to the person that you are honoring. I knew one patient who loved the song Tennessee Waltz by Patti Page and sang it loudly every time I visited her. And another who loved Kentucky Rain by Elvis Presley. And the idiosyncrasy of the song choice gave the commemoration unique power. I know a third who liked opera, which I do not like, but I sort of began to like it while sitting with her. What is that song for you and your loved one which will summon their spirit in just a few notes? Listening to their favorite song on the anniversary of the day she or he died can have all the power of an encounter with their essence in the depths of your heart and soul, and of theirs. 4, observe a few moments of silence at any time when they come to your mind. You're going through the day and you pull up behind a car that has a bumper sticker that reminds you of them, or that someone in conversation uses a phrase that they used to use, or you see a head of hair at the grocery store that calls to mind their style, or you smell a scent that reminds you of them, or they come to mind for no particular reason at all. Stop, impromptu, and for merely 10 or 20 seconds, observe silence. Maybe consciously breathe in and out 3 times. And call to mind what it was like to be in their presence. See if you can remember their voice. Contemplate them, perhaps watching you as you stand or sit there, remembering them. Maybe at the end of the silence, say hello. just to pause in their honor, but can be powerful. You can set this particular day apart. 5, if you're a praying person, say a prayer on their behalf. Speak your mind and heart into the vast mystery. Maybe it would help you to think of a prayer as a casting of your love in the direction of the loved one. It doesn't have to get all tangled up in your thoughts and feelings and history regarding organized religion. You can mold your experience of prayer into your own approach and style, an intimate connection of hearts, yours and the person that you've lost. 6, put a memento of their life out on display in your home. When my wife died, we had a bonfire in her memory 48 hours later, and I kept a burnt piece of wood from those embers on display in my living room for about 10 years until it was time to take it down. But a photo, their favorite painting, a tasteful display of some crafting they did, or something like embers from a bonfire, can be an ongoing blessing of you from them and of their memory from you. 7, this can be very powerful. Visit their grave and take your hat off as you approach, laying a flower down on it, speaking to them. Walk up slowly, silently at first, approaching their grave respectfully. Our so-called rational society now says they don't want to visit graves anymore, don't want to remember the dead in their caskets beneath the ground. Do want to honor them by being busily productive, also known as frenetic. That is fine if that is your feeling and your approach. But a solemn and loving honoring is a time-honored way of saying that the life now ended has ongoing value to you. It is a value beyond the rational and utilitarian. To remember actively with a visit and a flower, just as love is beyond the rational and utilitarian. Visit their grave, take your hat off as you approach, laying a flower down on it, speaking to them, telling them what you feel and think. 8, make a donation in their name to a favorite cause or charity of theirs, or one which reminds you of them. Doesn't have to be a lot of money, $25, something like that. Make of the donation something of an honorable ceremony, even if it's just writing out a check and pausing for a moment of silence as you put the envelope in the mailbox. 9, without overdoing it, tell stories about them to those who would be willing to listen. This has a way of keeping their memory alive and honoring their unique presence on this earth. Everyone has a story they have left behind, uniquely theirs. What is the signature story of your loved one? What is the tale that communicates and keeps alive the essence of that flitting shadow that was your loved one's life? My father used to keep alive the essence of his beloved Uncle Minna, a Welshman whose job it was to behead the Christmas goose down in the cellar one Christmas morning. My apologies to vegans and vegetarians listening today. My dad would laugh to the point of tears while talking about the hour that Uncle Minna was down there bumping, banging, hollering in futility. My dad would talk about the squawks of the goose and this. I'm laughing because I'm just picturing him laughing as he was telling this story. And my uncle, I knew him. He was quite the colorful character. And laugh until he could hardly breathe. Finally, Uncle Minna came upstairs and put the axe down and sat on a chair and said shamefacedly, that he couldn't succeed in killing the goose.
Hmm.
At that point, Aunt Helen, his wife, picked up the axe, went downstairs. There was one swift thump, and she came upstairs, having killed the Christmas goose. This concluding detail again made my dad bowl over with laughter as he told it for the umpteenth time, tears literally flowing down both cheeks. Stories like that. You have one or several. Tell them and keep the stories alive. Light a candle, read a poem, listen to a favorite song, observe a few moments of silence, say a prayer of the heart, display a memento, visit their grave respectfully, make a donation, and tell a story. You can do all nine or pick and choose a few. These practices can help you experience the divine within the darkness, and it takes time. We're so used to turning on light switches and getting lights and nuking our food and having it instantly hot that we forget that nature works at the speed of a seed that you've planted in the ground. It works at the speed of a bone healing. So it takes time to heal and grow a new post bereavement you. I had a hospice patient, very dear to me, whom I'll call Henry. Real name is withheld because of Privacy Act. But in my role as chaplain, I visited Henry in his West Dallas, which is a urban area just outside of Milwaukee, apartment for the elderly, even though he wasn't that old. And we would talk in detail about his life. He's a very affectionate man, and we had strong rapport, sharing a lot of laughter about daily activities and sports teams. The conversation deepened into great fondness and respect, and he became more intimately forthcoming. The low light of his life, which he shared with me in a hushed tone, was his time fighting in the war in Vietnam. Henry was an actual combatant. In my time as hospice chaplain, I've met a lot of men who served as paper pushers, mechanics, munitions expediters, and stateside as cooks. But Henry was on the front lines for 2 years, getting shot at and shooting back. Eventually, and they got around to sharing with me his primal wound. In combat, he shot a Viet Cong soldier and looked him in the eye as he died. Ever since, on an almost nightly basis, Henry had nightmares. Decades passed, and Henry still could not shake the hideous experience of dreaming that the mother of the man he had killed was seated at the foot of his bed, weeping and wailing for her son. Henry awoke each night for decades in a cold sweat. He cried real tears to me about this as we embraced. Now, this is not a story about someone coping with the loss of a loved one, but it is a story of using ceremonial honoring to cope with grief. After letting Henry cry through his grief for a second time in my presence, I mentioned ceremonial observance concepts as a way of deepening his own awareness and perhaps getting a new lens of perception on his grief. He was an earnest man with a beautiful heart, and I knew he would engage seriously. I proposed that we light a special candle and say a prayer to the spirit of the mother who'd been haunting him for 40 years. I went out in my car and was lucky to find a place in Henry's vicinity that sold candles, returning to him that very day. We set the situation up in the kitchen, candle in makeshift holder on his table with lights off, but light infiltrating from the rest of the apartment, and lit the candle solemnly. Then it was time for me to leave, so Henry could say his prayers in private. Henry kept up his daily prayers to the mother of the man he had killed for the rest of his life, which was just 6 weeks. He said that addressing the spirit world related to that military tragedy took the fear off the process of his own dying. It didn't remove it entirely, but it blunted the edge of it. He said that for the first time in 40 years, he looked upon that bereaved mother not as a figure of dread, but as a potential friend. So the ceremonial observance worked on its own terms.
Mm-hmm.
It injected a new level of thoughtfulness and a different perspective into Henry's life. There is power for healing in all of these practices for you and me. There you go.
Wow. Um, so many things going through my head through every part of these suggestions,
Yeah.
these concepts. Um, I I am not a music buff, but one thing I do often find myself doing is listening to some things that remind me of a time, uh, a friendship, a bond, a connection, or somebody who's passed. So I think while I haven't necessarily thought of music and songs for certain people I've lost who have passed away, I definitely can think about people who are in my life currently. If I lost them, what would definitely like
Yeah.
resonate with me. And
Yeah.
I think part of the problem is some of the people I've lost in my life, I wasn't we weren't bonded and connected in such a way that I knew their favorite song. But I can definitely think about something where they a subtle reminder. Um, and so music is something I will incorporate going forward in my situations of grief and loss in life, more so than ever, I think, because I have a lot more connection with music and the people of my generation or people that are still alive and around me. Um, I really like that. That one connects with
Beautiful.
me quite a bit. The other one, and I think it's maybe the easiest and most subtle, but probably for people who are not, because we talked about it in the beginning of this before we even started. Being present, being a noticer, conscious, aware. And so if you're that type of person, the one where you say you take a pause to honor, to connect with that
Yeah.
spirit because of that trigger, that little reminder, um, that really resonated with me. And here's an little quick story. My I, I I spent some time growing up with my grandparents on my mother's side. My grandmother would say that she raised me, um, but I didn't live with her all my childhood. I just lived with her some of the good years of my childhood, right? The golden years. And my grandfather, and he was a Korean War era veteran, but he passed away June 1st, 2014. And something one of his Navy Korean War era tattoos that he got was a rabbit on his belly in such a way where the rabbit's asshole, pardon my language, was his belly button.
It says belly button.
Yeah. So as you can imagine, my grandfather being older, he drove truck and was a wrecker, hauler, whatever. So he got a belly. But he
Oh
had this
yeah,
rabbit. He had this rabbit, and it was just always it was so funny.
I love it.
Well, this last week, and on the day of his passing, two things happened. So this last week, and on the day of his passing, I was starting my shift at work in Seattle at a hospital. I was still a newish nurse, so I was orienting to a unit, and I got the call that he passed, and
Mm.
I was kind of shook, and I had to leave. On my way out to the parking lot, there's shrubs and bushes, but there was a wild, free roaming rabbit, and it always stuck with me. And I was like, "Wow, that's my papa," you know. And this last week, so I go see a therapist. I'll call him more of a life coach because I think that's more of our relationship. But I see regularly, and we go for walks. Rain or shine, we always go for a walk. And I was walking along downtown Spokane, Washington, and this last week I saw a rabbit as we were doing our walk, and I was like, "Hey, Papa." Um, and I pause and I take a few moments of notice and like whether verbally out loud or mentally, I'm like, "Hey, Papa, thanks for visiting, thanks for checking on me." Um, so yeah, those observances that I didn't pay attention to bunnies as much as when he was alive, but every time I see one that's just sort of randomly hanging out, crossing my path, and makes itself known to me, I'm like, "Hey, there's Papa." So
That's marvelous.
yeah,
I
so
love it.
that that sticks out quite a bit for me.
You're coming up
Um,
on the 10-year anniversary of his passing.
yes, yeah, yep, coming up there.
June 1st.
Yeah, yeah. And I like the candle. I really like that story in the candle, and I'm glad you share that today because it like as soon as I recalled that I was like, oh yeah, this was in your novel, your story, Heart Like a Bonfire. I remember this and really having an amazing impact that just really resonated with me. Um,
And with me.
yeah. Um, I like I mean, across a lot of cultures, religions, traditions, candles are a big thing. You could probably enlighten me, no pun intended, um, on a little bit more of that historically across the geo-social, world of that ceremonial practice. But
I can't. I don't know anything about
yeah, well,
it.
you know more than I do, but which isn't much as far as I know. But it always, I mean, because we see in a lot of Christian media portrayals of honoring and people going into the chapel or to the church and doing the candle lighting and
Hmm.
whether you watch something of today's culture and era or something that's a millennia ago, you'll see that type of honoring, and so there's some deep
Right.
roots with it. But
Totally.
I really like that story, and I can't say that I've ever honored anyone myself on a occasion with a candle, but I like the practice. And we used to do as part of self care for nursing and these health and professions that um, are susceptible to burnout because of the moral distress, um,
Yeah.
processing these really tough situations. I remember our hospice. I'm sorry, not hospice, but just our hospital chaplains had set up this. It was like on the intranet for the facility, and it was a you could click on your desktop of every computer, and there was a little thing, and it was a candle, and it would bring you to a web page, and you could see all the candles that people virtually lit.
Oh,
Um, and
that's great.
you had to stay within privacy information, right? But like, you would see someone, ICU nurse for my patient who, is fighting for his life with pancreatitis and this, that, whatever, right? Like, or they might mention, for my uh, first time mother whose child is on life support in the NICU, like, and it was a way for staff to really just kind of put that out there. And as you looked at it, you're just going, wow, look at all the people we touch who are really having a hard time. And I mean, there was celebration stuff too, but it was usually an honoring of somebody else that's going through a tough time. So,
That's
but it was candle.
marvelous.
The idea was a candle, and it was a new digital version of it, right?
Right.
So yeah,
That's marvelous.
those really stood out for me as
I
you.
know, interesting thing is, I don't know if I read this somewhere, if it just suggested itself to me. The actual candle burning, the actual flame is an interesting metaphor for human life
Hmm.
because it looks the same always. It's just, when it's not getting flickered by wind, it's just steady.
Yeah.
But in actual fact, it's changing dramatically every second.
Oh
It's
yeah.
massive combustion of cells,
Right.
just like a
Right.
human life. And it
Yeah.
seems so steady and permanent, and then all of a sudden it's put out.
Right.
You know, it's just and it's burning the wick. You could go on and on with the sort of the symbolism, but I
Yeah.
see it that way. It's like we are a candle flame,
Yeah.
as was the life of each of our loved ones that's gone.
Hmm. Now, as you gonna go deeply personal and not to put you on the spot, but or maybe um, you had mentioned the burning the charred wood,
Yes.
and something that I clung to was you had said it was displayed until it was no longer. I don't remember the exact words,
Yeah, until
but
it was time to take it down.
until it's time to take it down. Wow, that's a big statement, and it brought to me questions that are only answerable by individuals experiencing things. And I thought of the family who's deciding when to put or donate the clothing of their loved one. I thought of the
Yes.
I thought of the family member who leaves their child that they've lost room in a time capsule stasis.
Yes.
When is time? Like,
Yeah. Wow. Like I said earlier about there being no prescription.
yeah,
For me, it was a sense of, well, there was a new woman in my life who was uncomfortable with it, you know,
yeah,
with the charred thing being up. So I was like, okay, it's been a long time.
hmm,
At one point it was, it felt like the living essence of Carrie was still there. And after 10 years, it didn't feel that way anymore. I don't know, you just come to a sense of when is a graceful flowing of your life that it's time to take it down.
and
That's how I feel too.
so
The same with her clothing.
right, right,
I kept it, for probably a year, and then there just comes a time in which it feels like holding it longer is, and there's no right or wrong, but for me there was a point where yeah, this is something to take to the Goodwill.
Yeah.
You know, hold graceful flowing is the word that I
Hmm.
is the phrase that I come up with there. You know,
Now, how
uh,
about similar things for your daughters?
yeah,
Was there a memento, a thing in that they have kept or
yeah,
displayed or chosen to honor, and for them without little different dynamic, um
yeah, mom.
yeah, but is that something that they still is a fixture in their world?
Photographs
Okay, yeah, yeah.
that they still have and cherish.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
think there's a as our culture, because I mean, maybe other cultures are less sentimental and maybe others are more sentimental,
right.
but in our culture there's definitely this um pictures are almost universally acceptable, like,
Yeah,
yeah, you have a picture, a memento. Okay, now if you have a mural collage, maybe that's a little extreme, like, right?
yeah,
um But on the other hand, if it's like you said, something that really, like you said, it's a almost like their presence is associated with it.
yeah.
Then at some point, like, it almost becomes clinical, um, and yeah.
What do you mean by what do you mean by
What I
clinical?
mean, what I mean by or pathological, I don't know what the word I'm
Ah,
thinking of. But it's like, oh, wait a minute, this person has not grieved appropriately because it's been this long and they're still wearing the locket with their hair in it, and you know what I
yeah,
mean, like, or you have the or here's, I mean, something people do, they're wearing their wedding ring around their neck on a necklace, and um you know how we don't you'd like to think everybody's allowed to have their own process, but I think there's just generally like a social uneasiness at some point with it. And I don't, and I'm torn, like, you know should anybody be threatened or judged or worried about something or that person, or should they just always be allowed to grieve if it seems like they're living healthy and they're not, it's not impairing their quality of life, like, gosh, I don't know. Like you said, it's not prescriptive, there's no one size fits all, but I think it's important to be curious.
yeah. That's a really
And
good question that you're bringing up. I really appreciate you and thank you for bringing it up. Um, doing bereavement work. Um, I see somebody that's perhaps holding on to something too long.
yeah, okay.
I respectfully ask a question. You know, if if anything, I might just not say anything. I'm
Hmm.
sure that that's been the case. On other occasions, I might just look into saying, "You think you're gonna wear that wedding ring around your neck for the rest of your life?"
Right,
Respectful, and I'm not going to tell them that they shouldn't. I'm not going to say, "Oh, well, that's wrong."
right, right.
I'm just going to say, "Oh," and what they say is yes or no, and it's their process.
Yeah.
It's their process.
Hmm.
Respectful. Yeah, one thing to me is I always use the word empathy in every single patient chart that I do. What do they need from me? I always say warm, unhurried empathy. And so
Mm-hmm.
I climb into the mindset that can't let go of the ring or can't get rid of the clothing. And I just sort of get into that, and I say, there's no way I'm going to get rid of this. I don't care what the prescribers have to say about it.
Right.
Just kind of live with that for a while,
Yeah.
and then I'm kind of on their side with it,
Mm-hmm.
and just yeah, that's my reaction. Um, if somebody wants to carry the ring around their neck for 20 years, if it's not disturbing other people, no problem.
Yeah.
If it
Yeah.
is disturbing someone, then you've got to that other person's got to talk about it.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Um, well, and that I think it's hard, whatever the motivate, what moving on looks like, and I think people think of moving on as kind of a dirty word. And I think what I take from these lessons today is that moving on doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean you stop honoring. It doesn't mean you stop memorializing. And um, yeah, there's going to be thoughts, and without Mary's going to kill me. But I was curious because I had my experience this week with the rabbit, and um, but I was thinking, like, what was the last little thing that reminded you of your wife that passed away, and it's been that was in the 90s, if I
Yeah.
remember.
Oh, Marion going to kill you.
Oh,
No thanks.
I know, I'm teasing. Mary's gonna kill me. But no, what was the last little thing where you stopped and did that couple of moments of like noticing, take a breath, and say, "Well, that was a cool
It's
memory. I'm
been a
glad that
while.
that passed."
It's been
And
a while.
yeah,
She used to Down syndrome. There was a home for Down syndrome adults
okay,
in the town where we lived, and she was friends with all of them, and
hmm,
would she always wore bright red lipstick,
oh,
and she would you'd be around town, and you'd see Down syndrome adults walking around with a red lipstick kiss on their cheek, and I'd say, "Oh, Carrie's within the block."
uh, yeah,
I know that they recently encountered Carrie. It
yeah,
was a small town.
that's
And so when I see Down syndrome adults, I think of Carrie.
okay, yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
Well, and I think that's a truly in if we were to like think of things in this scale of like honoring, remembering, you're you're it's not this weird like fetish fixation hang up type thing. It's a wow, this is the mark she left on humanity that reminds me of her.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. Right?
Yeah.
Like
Well
that's
said.
cool. Yeah.
Well said.
It's not like something that would be more like deeply personal of like, oh, I remember I smelled this thing and it was the perfume she wore on the first date we had that bring it
Yeah.
that's really like really romanticizing, right? Like I you could just feel there's a little difference there, right? So
Yeah. I see what you're saying.
there's this connection to them as a human in this world and how their presence was
Yeah.
something to be honored versus I'm going through these feelings because their presence and romantic part of it is being exposed or something. That's all I was thinking. So, but yeah, um, And I think that's the way it should be. You know, if someone was made everybody laugh, um, and had a real like just good like totally humorous, and you hear a joke that would be of their flavor, like, and you it makes you laugh. You're like, huh, that's a good way to honor them. Yeah. So anyway,
Well,
yeah, I was just curious.
what I would like to do, Nick, is invite. Right now, we've got no viewers, but we're usually in a week's time. We're usually getting 40 to 50.
Yeah.
So those people who watch this
Hmm.
and would like to respond, I'd like people to respond, if possible, to
Yeah.
write which two or three of these ceremonial approaches appeals to you most and makes you feel like they would help you channel your feelings on your dead loved one and activate a new level of awareness of the mystery of life. Boom.
Yeah. I
Second,
like it.
yeah, and secondly, have you had any potent experiences of ceremony in your life before this? If so, what did you learn?
Yeah. Let's see here. Oh, we got a. There we go. We got Mary. Let's see. Let me type that. Here we go.
Oh, you've got it written down there.
Yeah, we're gonna do this. Here we go. Control. We're gonna copy it. Nice. There we go. All right. We just put it into the chat for the stream.
Oh, you're so adept at these technical things.
Hey, I'm getting there.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. It's not popping up yet. Maybe it takes a minute to show up. I don't know.
Okay. And then
Try that again.
invite people to respond to that. I invite people to respond to that. And secondly, just a lead in for next time, we're going to look at um, the meditation aspect of healing,
Okay.
meditative self healing. I've sent this script that we're reading to three people now.
Mm-hmm.
The three recipients, it's more than three people. It's one, two, three, four, five, six people, and in three, and I'm getting feedback that they're really finding it to be helpful.
Well, awesome. Good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, what has there been any specific parts that have? Is there like a theme of certain things
No,
that
no,
connect,
there
or
isn't.
is there a
It's
little bit
kind of
of it's across the board?
scattered. But what they like is the fact that there's something that you can sort of get your hand on. That
Okay.
you know. Okay, so there's no training in this.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, oh, what do I do? I have no clue.
Right.
I'm just going to say that they're in a better place, and that it's time for me to have fun,
Mm-hmm.
and then go from there.
Right.
So just to get a little bit of guidance on something even as simple as the triage and the
Right.
ceremonies, it's just like, oh wow.
Yeah.
And then it's my personal feeling that they're all essential, but that this meditative aspects of self healing really has a lot of power if you do the other two things,
Yeah.
the triage and ceremonial honoring.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. I'll be curious to see what you have in store next week with the meditative part of it.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, because I think people, and what I'm looking forward to with that is making, when people think of meditative, there's often almost an overwhelming feeling of like, I don't know how to do that. um,
Yeah, yeah,
or where do
exactly.
I begin? So I'm looking forward to it because I know you are, talking and working with you this last year is that you make things very relatable and seem doable. Um,
Good, good.
and
That's really nice to
I
hear.
think it's good for people, especially going through grieving and bereavement, to have these tools in a way that is accessible to all skill levels.
Yeah, and here's the great thing for me to tell you about. I don't know how to do that. Is secret is that you talk to seasoned meditators who have been doing it for 15 years, and they'll say the same thing. The only thing about it is that they become playful about not knowing how to do it,
Mm,
and they just take joy in I don't really know what I'm doing.
yeah,
But then you just relax into it, lean into saying I don't know what I'm doing. But
gotcha.
we do have specific instructions. There's over 100 different types of meditation.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and this one's really a good one for self compassion.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. You know what I do, Nick, too? I don't know if I've shared this with you personally or not. My mind wanders when I'm meditating,
Yep. Yep. I think
obviously,
you did mention.
everybody's does. And when I catch myself, oh, my mind's wandering, I can get back to this now. I pat myself on the back, literally.
Yeah.
Congratulations, John. You caught yourself, and now you're going back into to doing it. It's a positive reinforcement as opposed to self shaming.
Right. Yeah. No, that's good. That's good.
And
Yeah.
then next week we'll do that, and that will be the end of this opening round of stuff that we're talking
Yeah.
about. Yeah, and I've got the next stuff percolating.
Yep. That's right. We have some books on deck that are some good topics and engagement for continuing the journey, and discovery. I think some of them are grief, bereavement related, but others are also, um, from what I recall, just good for the soul.
Right.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So,
And we'll get into climate stuff too.
yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. Very cool. Well,
Nick,
yeah. Thank you. And
I think we did a good podcast again.
awesome. I think so too. And for anybody that tuned in, we really appreciate your time. And we hope that you get joy or insight or inspiration, encouragement, all those good things, um, to carry you through the days. And please post comments and share your experiences with us, please. Absolutely.
Peace to one and all.
All right. Thank you all. Bye bye.
Thank you, Nick.